back on your research, are there 2 to 3 simple, practical, underappreciated lessons you've learned that you'd most like to pass along to others?
Yeah, there's a lot of lessons I've learned. I think one of the most important lessons I've learned from my work is that when we make it fun to pursue our goals, we get further faster. I think there's actually really wonderful research by Ayelet Fishbach at the University of Chicago and Caitlin Woolley at Cornell University that makes this point very directly, but I came to it from doing some work on a topic I call temptation bundling, which shows that when there's a chore that we dread, if we can combine it with something we look forward to, something that's a temptation, for instance, only letting yourself listen to your favorite audiobooks or watch your favorite TV shows while you exercise at the gym, or only letting yourself pick up a snack you look forward to while you're heading to the library to hit the books, you get better results. And that seems to be driven by the fact that when we can transform an activity that we would otherwise dread, that would otherwise not be a source of pleasure, into something that we actually look forward to because it's associated with a temptation, the results are dramatically better in terms of goal persistence and goal performance. So I'd say that's a really important lesson from my work and from the work of others, that not only influences how I get my exercise done, but just how I think about all of the projects I take on in life. How can I make them more enjoyable? Is it by making sure I work with collaborators who make it a pleasure to come in each day? Or maybe it's by pursuing topics in my research or in my teaching that I just am crazy about, so that I know it'll be a joy to be in the classroom or to be working on a paper. I try to find ways, either through the people I work with, through the topics I pick, or through the things I bundle with them, to make all the things that are goal pursuit enjoyable. So I'd say like that's probably the biggest lesson. But you asked for a couple, so let me give you one other that I really love. And this is really an insight that came from Lauren Eskridge-Winkler, who is a brilliant faculty member at the Kellogg School at Northwestern University. But once upon a time, she was a PhD student and then a postdoc at Penn, and I had the pleasure of hanging around her. And she had the amazing insight that often we think about the power of advice giving and mentorship as helping the recipient. But she posited that it may also be of enormous benefit to the advice giver or the mentor. And the reason she thought this might be the case is she was doing interviews with struggling students and salespeople who weren't meeting their goals, and trying to ask them what might help them achieve more. And they were just so delighted to be asked their opinion, and basically said they're constantly being given remedial advice and treated like they know nothing, and it's really a downer. And they just love someone asking for their insights for once. And she realized the act of asking someone to be a coach, a mentor, to offer advice is really an ego boost. And it forces people to introspect in ways they wouldn't otherwise about what might be helpful to someone like them trying to achieve similar goals. And then once they offer advice to someone else, they'll feel hypocritical not taking it themselves. So she suspected that advice giving might help the advice giver. And she ran a bunch of experiments, and I got to be involved in one massive field experiment showing this hypothesis is right. We did one study with high school students in Florida, demonstrating that assigning students at the beginning of the semester to give advice on successful study habits for about 10 minutes to their younger peers improved the performance of the advice givers in the class they were most hoping to improve in, and in math. So importantly, it didn't turn C students into valedictorians. It's a small effect, but it was robust and really exciting. So those are the two things I'd say. Make it fun to pursue your goals, and think about how you can coach others with similar goals if you actually want to boost your own achievement. Because in coaching and teaching, you get joy because it's a wonderful feeling to give, and you actually benefit yourself and improve your own performance.
So really interesting. I just had a few thoughts on this. First, in terms of bundling, you're doing a little bundling right now. Thank you so much for coming on as you're walking on your way to work. So just appreciate that. And this idea of making it fun to pursue goals, I learned this from sports. It's so easy to exercise when you have to train for a sport, right? It's the same idea. But when I learned of your research, temptation bundling, and I tried to apply it in my own life, it's kind of like, yeah, sure, it's way more fun to exercise if you're playing a game. But I started doing the bundling exactly with exercise. I used to always get my exercise through sports. COVID hit, could no longer play sports. And so I started to run. Well, I could never run more than maybe a mile on a treadmill before I would get bored out of my mind. And so I learned about temptation bundling, and I start listening to books and podcasts and running outside. And so it was, one, nice to get outside, but two, that was the time where I would get to learn something new. And so I just really appreciate this work on temptation bundling. And then second, this is an interesting idea. Isn't it? This is an interesting idea about the power of being a mentor. It reminds me of the work that I've done on amplification. So when we set out on a project with some colleagues at the University of Utah, we were looking at, we were examining an effect with some, I'll have to edit this real quick, or I'll edit this briefly when I go to production. Some female Obama staffers felt like they weren't being listened to, and then they started amplifying one another, and they felt like they became more influential. And so we empirically tested that to find if amplifying others would help the recipient of the amplification. And we did find that if somebody is not being listened to and I amplify them, that can help that person have more status and influence. But the most surprising and interesting effect to me was the fact that it actually benefited the amplifier. So just by amplifying other people, whether they were low status or high status, whether they had a good idea or a bad idea, it made me seem more communal and increased my own status. And so cool to see that you get these effects. One, when you're helping other people, you can help them, but two, you can also help yourself by helping others.
Yeah, I love that connection. And P.S., so glad to hear that temptation bundling was helpful to you. It's helpful in my life as well. And but yeah, I love that amplification effect and the connection with the power of advice giving. So often, I think we think, if we want to advance ourselves, that means putting yourself first. Yeah. But actually, often putting others first and helping other people is an important way where you can get benefits yourself and help someone else. So it magnifies the results. And I think we have to appreciate that more in life.
Yeah, well, I love these lessons, Katy. I look forward to teaching these to my students and my children and continuing to apply. One of the first things I do in the morning is I try to figure out which podcast or which audiobook I'm going to listen to later in the day. So I can be looking forward to that so I can get my exercise in. And I just really appreciate you taking the time to share these with me today.
My absolute pleasure. And hopefully some people are listening to this while exercising or doing some other activity. So hopefully someone's getting a little temptation bundle in with this wonderful conversation. I appreciate you having me.